Guten Abend. Es freut mich sehr, Sie heute Abend in der Reihe Kosmopolitics zwischendurch zu begrüßen und dass Sie jetzt wirklich im virtuellen Kosmos mit uns dabei sind. Diese kleine Reihe ohne Publikum machen wir ja so lange, bis wir wieder öffentliche große Veranstaltungen machen können hier im Forum. Aber bis dahin bleiben wir hier in einer kleinen Runde mit 2 Gästen. Und diese Veranstaltung wird übrigens aufgenommen, auch für morgen. Sie können das also auch Ihren Freunden dann empfehlen und die kann auch auf YouTube und auf anderen Medien dann geguckt werden. Diese Reihe Kosmopolitics zwischendurch machen wir in Zusammenarbeit mit dem Medienpartner Wochenzeitung, die WOZ, und diesmal auch mit dem Theater am Neumarkt als Host. Das Theater am Neumarkt hat ja eigentlich eine unter dem Titel Nouvelle Nahda eine Bühnenaufführung mit libanesischen Künstlern geplant gehabt, musste dann aber diese auch wegen Corona in eine neue Form der Zusammenarbeit überführen. Dazu gibt es Details auf der Homepage vom Theater am Neumarkt. Vielleicht können wir das kurz einblenden, damit die Leute sehen, wie so eine Website aussieht. Hat das geklappt? Gut, also mehr Informationen zu Nouvelle Nahda auf der Website von Theater am Neumarkt, Nouvelle Markt. Aber ganz wichtig, hier im Kosmos haben wir natürlich in den Außenräumen und in den Fenstern Installationen mit Fotos und Texten, die eben in dieser Zusammenarbeit und in der Weiterentwicklung des Projektes vom Neumarkt mit libanesischen Künstlerinnen entstanden sind. Zum Beispiel eine Soundinstallation von Nur Sukun mit Fotos von Miriam Boulos unter dem Titel Resisting Turbulences. Dazu gibt es natürlich auch noch Texte von Ibrahim Nehme, der hier neben mir sitzt. Mehr dazu von ihm später, der aus Beirut kommt. Und diese Arbeiten nehmen die Stimmung des Aufstandes im Libanon auf, vom Oktober 2019 bis auch dann später. Und auch diese gewaltige Explosion, an die Sie sich erinnern mögen, die wirklich die ganze Stadt und auch die ganze Region erschüttert hat. Um vielleicht einen Vorgeschmack von dieser Installation Ihnen zu geben, erlauben wir uns einen ganz kurzen Ausschnitt, einen Clip zu zeigen. Und wir würden uns dann erlauben, nach der Diskussion dann den ganzen Film, also diese ganze audiovisuelle Arbeit dieser beiden Künstlerinnen Ihnen zu zeigen. Vielleicht machen wir noch den kurzen Clip.
Aisément. Je prends mon Nescafé. J'écoute les nouvelles.
Basically, right after the speech ended, people went back to the streets with fury and anger this time.
Étrangère.
دولة اليوم في حالة ترهل وضعف.
Local.
والخوف يتمدد من الوضع المالي.
Ja, ich wechsle nun ins Englische, um unsere beiden Gäste zum Thema 10 Jahre Arabellion zu begrüßen. Ahlan Zahar. You were born in Dara, in Syria. You have studied English literature. You worked as a journalist for the Syrian TV. And then you decided in 2015 to come to Switzerland with your 3 children. You are living now in Bern, right? And you're working also for different medias as a journalist.
Yeah.
So why Switzerland?
First, because I have a brother who lives in Switzerland.
Oh.
So he helped me to come to Switzerland. And because also I have no another choice, then I decided to come to Switzerland to flee from the war, because it's very dangerous to stay there in Syria. And yeah, I feel safety here. Yeah.
It sounds very easy, but I think it
No,
was
actually nothing is so easy when you run from your country, that you are obligated to run away from your country. So it's never easy. So I have to go to Lebanon. I was in Beirut for a month, and then I flew to Turkey, and then inside Turkey I traveled from one city to another city, and then I traveled from Istanbul to Zurich and many cities also in Switzerland until we are in Bern. It's not so easy at all. You will run away while you have fears, because on the way you don't trust, even if you travel legal or even if you travel by plane and you know that you have security in the plane and you have security on your way, but you don't trust because you lived in a country with mistrust since you are a child, so you don't trust. And as soon as I was in Switzerland, I could sleep. So I was sleeping like a dead, but before I couldn't sleep for more than the last 3 months in Syria. I really missed a lot of sleep. I couldn't, so it's not easy at all.
So would you describe yourself as a refugee?
First, as a human, as Zahar, also I missed my name in Switzerland. They call me Zahar. And so I describe myself as Zahar, as a human, as Syrian. Yeah, why not as a refugee? Why not? It's not my country. Switzerland is not my country, but it is a country that I feel safety, that I feel welcome because I have a lot of friends. And it's a country where the future will be for my kids. So it's maybe not my future, but the future of my children. They are already studying in Switzerland, and it is their future. So it will be their country.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Ahlan wa zahlan.
Ahlan.
And I say also ahlan wa zahlan or masa al khair to Ibrahim. You're like Zahar, also journalist, Sahafi. But you describe yourself as a creator, as I have noticed, creator, curator, and writer. And you are from Beirut, as told, Lebanon. And you were also very active in the uprising before or later, but for sure in 2019. You have written on that in your magazine. You have created a magazine which we have also here in our bookshop. Yeah, but at the end, what exactly are you doing in Switzerland now?
It's a lucky coincidence, like the Theater Neumarkt came to Beirut in 2019, just a week before the revolution started. And they were scouting for potential collaborators from Beirut to work with them and station from Beirut on a new production. Mm-hmm. And
we have to say maybe station is a big cultural center important one in Beirut.
Yeah. So yeah, I ended up meeting with them. We had like some very interesting discussions, and I later joined the project, which ended up morphing and changing in many different ways, and it manifested first in April. It was meant to be a theater production, but then COVID happened, and we somehow took all the research that we produced and published it online. And then I came here in January with some other Lebanese artists, including Miriam and Noor, with the intention of finally staging the show. And obviously that didn't happen as well, and it became a film in another twist of events. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
As an artist, in a way, I can say.
Yeah.
And are you working still as a journalist also?
I mean, I never really considered myself as a journalist because it was always maybe using the journalistic space to kind of subvert that space as well. So even the way we did journalism in the magazine was like kind of pushing it in a way, in the way we like commissioned stories, in the way we conceived or came up with stories. I think it was, or it still is, borderline between journalism, activism, and also creative expression. So I feel I occupy this like blurry space in between.
Great. Also, welcome then.
Thank you.
Switzerland. Stay with us a little bit.
I hope I can.
Okay, so let's open the discussion. You remember 17th of December 2010, Mohamed Bouazizi, the poor vegetable seller, burned himself in Tunisia, and Ra'san, as we say, immediately the demonstrations and the uprising started until January. And shortly after that, the Day of Anger was declared in Egypt, and boom, it started also in Egypt in January 25th, 2011. And then it went to Algeria, Bahrain, Yemen, everywhere. And of course, later in Dara, which was the first city where you came from, where the first big demonstration started also at that moment in Syria. And the dictators left. Ben Ali fled to Saudi, Mubarak went to jail. I mean, yeah. And in February, it started also with you guys in Syria.
In March, actually.
In March?
Yeah.
I thought in February.
No, already it's in March.
I see. So what was your feeling then? It was Rabia, it was spring.
Yeah,
Sure.
we wished to have a spring, but actually it ended up not spring, but it's a bloody season maybe, and it's sad.
Can you tell us more details? What happened exactly?
In Dara, or how do we feel before this
I mean,
Arabian Spring?
Yeah, if you can tell the audience here in Switzerland what happened, in your city, and what happened then to your feelings like.
Yeah, actually in my city, so because of what's happened in Tunisia, Egypt, so I really wished that it comes to Syria. And I just remember that day when it's even before the revolution started in Tunisia, I said, maybe this is the first time in my life I say this story to anyone. So before the revolution started in Tunisia, I was sitting, and then I told my ex-husband that, why you brought me to sit in this place? Because we were walking, and then we sat in a place. And here it was the place where the mayor house, so the statue of Al-Assad is in front of me, and I sit on a stone, so Bashar al-Assad is behind me. So I told my ex-husband, why we are here? And he said to me, yeah, where we are going to go? You are tired, you cannot move. And that's why we said, no, I wish, it was my wish, and that's why I say it now. I wish that one day I will sit in this place without this statue in front of me, and I will say it with anger, and no picture behind me. And then my ex-husband just put his hand on my, don't talk. It's impossible to happen, and let's go home, because he was scared. Then I told him, no, I wish this will happen. And then I told him, believe me.
But he was right. I mean, it was dangerous at that time.
Yeah.
People were everywhere.
Yeah.
If somebody like you would talk, I'm against the dictator. And
yeah. But it's a wish. And then I told him it will happen in this place. Here, you will see the blood everywhere. I told him this because, why I said the blood? Because for sure we having a dictator who is our president. So for sure there's no revolution, there is no freedom without blood. And it's happened. So it comes in the city, in my city, and it started with kids. Maybe I don't know if everyone in Switzerland knows it is because of kids. So the kids, they wrote on the wall of the schools like Ejaket Doria Doctor, which means it is your return, or it comes to you, doctor, because Bashar al-Assad is a doctor. Yeah. So, and then they arrested the kids, and sadly they tortured them and they killed them. And when the parents or the fathers, let's say, they asked for the kids, and then the regime said to them, you have no kids here, and if you want to have a new kid, just send your wives. And you know, we live in Dara, you know, maybe you know it's Ashira, you know, we live in Ashira, like big families, big families. I didn't find a good word in English to say it. So Ashira, this means that they have like fire blood, they don't have normal blood. And then they started to, no, our wives, it's a shame on them, it's our honor. Then they started to, the people, they started to speak up and to ask for freedom, to ask for the kids. And there is a very, it's sad to say famous child, because it's a well-known child. His name is Hamza al-Khatib. The regime, they torture him in a very bad way with a drill. So I don't think that anyone will keep silence. So the people, they started to speak.
Thousands went into the street.
Yeah, and immediately the regime, they started to shoot. So I still remember that day in the middle of the night.
You went also to the demonstrations?
At that time, I couldn't say that I did it, because when I came, I was so scared to say I did it or not. And so let's say, I cannot answer this question, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I still remember everything. I still remember the first shot in the middle of the night that the regime did it. And they accused the people that they have weapons in the mosque, and it is lie.
So maybe we come back to the first question. What was your feeling at that moment?
When the revolution started, when the people, of course I was so happy.
You were happy?
Yeah, and I wish like that we have to change something, but he's stronger than the will of the people.
We will come maybe later back to the question why and why not, and what happened. Okay. So Ibrahim, you of course you were aware what's going on in Dara and in the rest of the world. You were, how old were you then? You were still young.
25.
Still young.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was your thoughts at that moment? Tunisia, Egypt, Dara.
I mean, obviously happiness, but also I feel happiness doesn't really capture it. There was also this sense of utter disbelief, you know, like we were just tuning into the news and just seeing one city fall after another, and just like this wave that was sweeping across all these different countries, and then dictators were falling, and we were like, what on bloody earth is happening? And I feel there was this like this energy in 2011, 2012, before things started going downhill from there, that was so hopeful and so inspiring. And I feel, even though things shifted a lot and we kind of departed from that very hopeful energy, I still look back at that time, and I mean, it was also the energy that led very personally to the creation of my magazine. It kind of, you know, was riding on that wave of inspiration that was very prevalent. You know, you would speak to people in different Arab cities, and they were just be ridden by hope. So yeah.
You're moved still when you think at that time, I see.
Yeah, of course. I mean, even though I think to be Arab is like in some ways to live with disappointment, but I think we shouldn't let that disappointment taint those experiences, because I think as we go back to them, you know, they're like, we accumulate victories, even though some victories end up being, you know,
tragedies.
Yeah, but this is part of our story, and it's not the end of our. The tragedy is also not the end of our story, and the possibility that happened, the possibilities that were very present 10 years ago, even though kind of the narrative shifted very much after that. I think it's important to remember and to plug back to that energy now, especially because it's very productive in many ways to work with it.
Okay, yeah, we might come back on that, because the question of creativity, art, and the work of the young people in new ways to describe their feelings was also very, very, very new in the Arab world, let's say. I mean, all these graffitis, all these paintings, you know, we know from the poetry, the Arab poetry, that this is something, you know, it's centuries, you know, but beside that, the visual aspects, I was also very surprised, you know, how strong it started to be. I mean, everywhere, and I don't know, that was something really new to me.
Yeah, and this, I think, also stayed, this idea that one can have a voice and that one's voice can have an impact. I think this stayed with us in the past 10 years. And looking at the Arab art or the art that was produced by Arab artists in the past 10 years, I think goes to show how powerful those seeds that were planted in 2011 and 2012 were. Because just having, you know, the space to express and like take on to social media, like 10 years ago, social media like wasn't existent. Like we were just like, you know, started, it was called the Twitter revolution, and like, or the Facebook revolution in Egypt. So yeah, I think it created opening for people to believe that there's a possibility for them to tell their own story, but the mere fact of telling it can actually change something, not necessarily in the grand scheme of things, but in their own personal lives and like the worlds they inhabit.
Now, when we're talking about the social media and so on, was it also the same way you felt in Syria, or that these new facilities gave you an opportunity to get to know new people, to get to know ideas, to communicate in a new way? Was that also the same?
Yeah, because, you know, we are from different city in Syria, so we started the people in the north, they started to hear the name of a village in Dara, for example, and then you started to get to know this geography in Syria. We know like the big cities like the Canton Bern, Canton Zurich, or Dara, Damascus, Aleppo, but we don't know each village. In the revolution, you know how much I knew that a lot of villages, and I was so proud to know them during the revolution. So you hear Ariha or Al-Wa'ir in Homs, and for me it was, yeah, there's something, or there is a city, look, the people, they have this energy, this will to change. So for me, I also knew like the geography in Syria, which it was for me like under like the cantons names or the big cities names.
May I ask, was that also an effect of the dictatorship, because it was difficult to move, or was it?
You can move, you know, before the revolution, but also you distrust, always the trust, you know. So I just remember like 20 years or more than 20 years, I went with my brother to Aleppo to buy his own first oud, and then
it's very known for that.
Yeah, exactly. So at night, we arrived at night, and I was so scared. I was so young with my little brother. He was also like 11 years. So like in Arab countries, that the man always protect the woman, but my brother will not protect me. So I started to charge my energy to protect myself and him. So it was not easy to move before the revolution, and it became very scary to move it during the revolution.
And during the uprising, it was the opposite, or was it? It was then a different.
After, you mean?
Yeah.
No, it became more dangerous. Or...
No. I mean during the uprising, you know, during, let's say, in March 2011. April.
It was difficult from the people from Dara to move to Damascus. So if you move from Dara to the Damascus, so you are in, there are some checkpoints, and they have to control your ID. And you know, in Dara we have big families. So if you say in Dara Al Jamus, so everyone who will know who is my father, who is my grandfather, so they know. So as soon as they see the checkpoints, they say, for example, Al Jamus. So they know there are some people who works or fighting or speaking up for freedom. So they will ask you, they will question you. So it was not so easy to move.
But on the social media, it was possible to communicate without fear?
also not. But you
No.
know, because we live also on the border, so Dara is near from Jordan. So
Jordan,
there are many people who use SIM cards from Jordan, like Omnia or Zehn.
Yeah.
So we can have this network from Jordan. So the people, they started to write on Facebook or to publish the demo in what happened in Dara with Jordanian networks or SIM cards. So it was not easy, but the people, they have their own way how to do it. So also it is a kind of creation. They created their own website. They created on their own Facebook pages. They
created their own network to communicate with
Yeah.
each other without fear. So it was also possible to do that in a way. In a way.
With the Jordanian network, yeah. But,
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So to come back, the uprising was ongoing. We were watching every day the demonstrations on Tahrir. I don't know, was it the same with you?
When we were watching what's happening in Egypt, of course we feel them. Our hearts with them, because like more than 40 years, you know, as a child, I grew up, I always hear Mubarak, 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 and then Gaddafi, Assad. There is no change
No
at all.
ending, yeah.
No ending, forever, as we say in Syria, إلى الأبد.
الأبد.
So it was so touching. I was touched when I see in Al Tahrir the people, they shout or scream for freedom. And I was also once in Egypt, so I love Egyptian people and I am with them. So my heart with them, of course, when they were there fighting by the words, actually not fighting. We still, yeah.
With you was the same. That was the first time that an Arab revolution also worked out, because we had not only satellite TV channels, we had also the mobilization on Facebook, on Twitter, on everything. So do you think that made it easier to think that we are equal in each country, that we're having, in a way, the same problems of our dictatorships, even if they are very complicated, you know? Lebanon is totally different than Syria, but...
Yeah, it's totally different, but there's still, you still live under oppression in different ways. And I think by being in that state of being oppressed, it connects people. So I can connect to the struggle of my friends in Egypt, even though their struggle is different, but I can relate very much to it, like the same to my friends in Syria or Tunis. And I understand that these are, like, I'm not lumping up all these countries in one, in one container, but there is somehow we feel with each other because we know how's it like to live under such oppression. But also I feel there was this breakthrough in 2011. I think it was also very much connected to social media, because I feel once we were able to control the flow of information, something kind of really broke through. Because before, the media was also very much like the state. They controlled the narrative and they controlled the flow of information. But as soon as we managed to kind of have a grip on the spread of information in a way that reaches mass level, I think that kind of changed the game. Because it wasn't before. Like in Lebanon, for example, in 2005, we had our own failed revolution. Failed to some extent. It was successful in so many ways, but also that's another story. But at the time, we didn't have access to those tools that that just emerged 5 years later and became so democratic. And it's also like interesting to look at what happened in Beirut in 2019. So almost like 15 years later after the Cedars Revolution, and just see how much change can happen by being able or having access to those tools that control the spread of information.
Could we say that the spirit of 2011 also helped the later uprising or revolutions, as we say in Lebanon, 19, and Baghdad, Iraq, at 19, because there was already a knowledge of how to to address, you know,
For sure. And fine-tuning the tactics also, you know, like, which is why I stress on this idea of accumulation. Like, we accumulate knowledge, we accumulate experiences, and we learn from them, and we continue, even though we lose along the way, but we kind of use that to, you know, refine our experience for the next time. But it also makes me think, like, cosmically, maybe, like in 2012, there was this wave that swept the Arab world, but also other places in the world. In 2019, when people in Beirut were revolting, also people in Hong Kong and Chile and like so many other places were revolting. So it makes me think, maybe there's this like cosmic wave that comes and just like people, you know, kind of rise up at the same time. Because it's, I'm not sure it's so coincidental in that way.
Okay. So maybe I will go to the opposite, because I feel with that your situation in Syria is not really in that mood, or you are not in that mood. You have told us that you already have decided to be now in Switzerland, to let your kids grow up in Switzerland. They will become Swiss probably, and. So what is about these waves? Will be another wave coming to Syria?
I think
will be you part of this new wave?
I hope, I wish also to be a part of this new wave, but as a mother, I couldn't stay there. Because when you, for example, the last month I was in Syria, so it was the bad time I ever faced in my life. So when you look at your kids and you know that you are the one who can save them and you are the one who can let them die, so you will not stay silent. So my little child said a word in Arabic which really let me decide now I should leave. You know, in Arabic we say homeland, we say watan. This is the big words. We say watan. All they say balad. But it was her first word. She said, "Mommy, watan is destroyed." And then when I hear that she said watan, not balad, you know, this heavy word in Arabic, and then I said, "Oh no, I will create a country for you."
We might have to tell the people here, watan means really. In Swiss, German, Vaterland, you know, it's a propaganda word, and Bilad is the ordinary word for a country.
Yeah. When a little child, like less than 2 years, she said, "My country, my watan is destroyed." And then I said, "No, I will create a watan for you." And then it was the moment, no, I should go. I know that I am happy that I have a revolution. I would like to be here to feel the change, or to see the change, to see that the government or the regime Assad is not there anymore. But when my little child said this, then I said, no, I should leave. I have no choice. I have to leave.
See. But in the other hand, you say it's not forever, the Assad.
He said forever. But the people, they say, no, it's not forever.
Good.
Yeah, the people still fighting, talking, doing their, but nothing is forever. Nothing.
Yeah. On the other hand, I mean, we have a problem all over the Arab world, which the most of people are not aware. I mean, the most educated, the most, let's say, the well-educated middle class left Syria, left Iraq, left, I mean, a lot of our friends left in Lebanon, a lot of Egyptians left. So there is, interestingly, a huge diaspora all over the world from all Arab countries. In a way, you are part of it. So what has that to do with the revolution in future and in the past? Maybe you have noticed that there was, I mean, in Egypt there was already a huge connection with the people in exile. I don't know, how was it in Syria?
Yeah, sadly that the most educated people, they left Syria, because also the people in Syria, they need the educated people. And it is also maybe from another side, it is positive, because then the educated people, they really can work on spread the information about what is going on in Syria, also to separate the information about how educated we are, because a lot of people in Switzerland, sadly, they ask me, when I look like, they always say, do you have European blood in your family? And for me, I take it, at the beginning, I take it always positive, you know, like, yeah, I am beautiful, so I take it like this, but now it makes me a little bit angry, yeah, because, yes, I'm beautiful, I'm Syrian, you know, so it's not that I have blood in European blood, then I'm beautiful, so yeah, we have beautiful people, so in this way, I can say how beautiful the people in Syria, and also how they are educated, because, okay, how could you speak English, you know? Oh, yeah, you see, I speak English because we learn in schools, from the kindergarten, we learn English, French, and now Russian. More than 10 years, the schools, they have Russian too. And so it is really two sides, positive and negative. Positive to tell how this country is beautiful and educated and open-minded, and from the other side, sadly, people in Syria, most of the teachers, they run away. So what about the schools? What about education? Most of the doctors, so the healthy care in Syria is really a disaster. The schools, a disaster. Yeah, so.
Not like before. Before it was better.
Education.
Yes.
Yes.
So do you think there will be, in a way, a reflection back, you know, from the people which are now living abroad in Europe or America? They will have influence back to what happened? On that question is also, when the revolution started in Syria, what was the aim? And was this aim inspired by people abroad?
It's not because of abroad, you know, it's always, it's from inside, nothing from outside. It is like, it's one body. So the Syrian people, the Syrian country, it is one body. So if it doesn't start from here, even if it comes from outside, the body will refuse it, always like this. But it comes from here. So that's why the people started to speak, yeah. But of course, some, they have the experience from outside, yeah, why not? There are a lot of educated people who lives outside Syria, and even they work in the political parts. So they have this influence on the inside, but it's started from inside, not from outside. Of course, when we see what's happened in Tunisia and in Egypt, so I don't think that the Syrian people will sit silent and not to demo or
So Lebanon is one of the countries which is really so much. I think it was even 100 years ago already a globalized country, because there were so many Lebanese living in Africa, in South America, in the US, in Canada, everywhere. I mean, it's a small country, but with a huge network all over the world. Had that also an influence on the ideas, or, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Also, yeah, I mean, like Zahir was saying, I feel that, you know, these people go and they take with them the seeds and they just plant them around the world, and I feel they just like flourish around the world. And I'm not romanticizing the idea, but like I feel there's a lot of value in people leaving their place and just like going to other places and affecting other places with, you know, their ideas and stories. But from a more practical level, like for example, the huge diasporic Lebanese population around the world has been so integral to the economy in Lebanon, and especially now after October 2019, when the economy started going downhill, it was like really the expats or the Lebanese abroad who would channel money into the country.
Save the country in a
Yeah,
way.
I mean, in a way, like, you know, like... So yeah, and even now after the explosion, a lot of people left. Like a lot of my friends have left, and it was the first time, because like there's always this talk about people leaving and the brain drain in Lebanon in particular, but it became very palpable after the explosion. People were leaving in droves. And I know it's sad in many ways, but eventually it will balance each other out. Like now there is no space for them because obviously a lot is not working. But eventually we will come to this point of balance, which we're not in now for obvious reasons. Yeah.
Good. So there, I could resume and say the diaspora will also help for the next wave.
For sure. For sure. Even like in the October Revolution, like in 2019, it was like the huge waves of demonstrations organized by the diaspora, like in front of like embassies around the world, and just taking to the street, like really help populate the narrative and just push it.
So there are more than 3 or 4 million Syrians in Europe now, all over, everywhere. I can go in any city and I see Syrians. Is that so?
Yeah, yeah.
And is there a network, or is there something?
Yeah, I think, of course, you know, like Arab, in our culture and habits, we like to communicate. We like to have friends. We like to have like a small society. Like I have my small society now in Switzerland from the Syrian people. And so, yeah, they have their networks. They invite each other to exchange thoughts, to eat together, because now, you know, in Switzerland, everything is fast, so we cannot cook our meals, and our meals needs a lot of time. So of course, we have these networks, and also we have our networks inside also. So we still have friends there, and we communicate. We know how the situation there, how is the life there, how is the political situation there, how is the society. But I feel like it's talk about here, not there, because your question is about...
It's interesting because I wanted to ask you, do you feel now, since you are now since 5 years in Switzerland, do you feel there's a kind, also a changement with your friends which are still in Syria, that they change also their minds because you have told them, or they get to know new ideas about, you know, women's rights, the relationship between men and women and all that stuff? Is there a kind of connection which might...
Yeah, it's very interesting to answer your question, actually, because your question is very interesting also. When I came to Switzerland, and I saw that the women, they are fighting for their rights, you know. For me, as an Arab woman, like a Frauenstreik, and I was involved also in the Frauenstreik. I have a lot of friends, so I was involved in Frauenstreik. And then what kind of rights the women in Switzerland, they are fighting for, it's actually not the same at all the women in Arab countries they are fighting for. So the loan, for example, the salaries equally, we have equally salaries in Syria. So the man and the woman, they have the same salaries. For me, it was very strange. But actually, yes, for the women rights, they started the women to exchange. I exchange with my friends, like here in Switzerland, so they are fighting for the loan. And, you know, in Syria, they said, what? No, don't say this. I say, yes. But actually, in Syria, I see that the Syrian woman is a very brave woman, because she fights to know where her husband, her son, her brother, you know, in the revolution, they arrested every man in the family. So
you think this has also changed the role of the woman in Syria?
Yeah, for sure. She is now the one who is responsible for the family. Before, okay, before the man, and then equal the woman and the man, they are responsible for the family. But now, no, the woman is the only responsible for the family, because the man is missed, the brother is missed, someone in the prison, or someone is killed. So she is the only one who educate the kids, and she is the only one who look for the life. And sadly, because also in some cities in Syria, because it's controlled by ISIS or Islamic groups, which is fighting for not the freedom but for their own business. So there they didn't allow the women to work. So the women, they are at home, and the kids, they are working, and also the kids, they are under pressure. They face rape, sexual harassment.
So do you think that now your friends in Syria, they see that you are, as a woman, having more freedom to walk in the street without harassment, or almost without harassment, all that stuff which is difficult in the Arab countries? Will this give back another anger, another wave of uprising of the women?
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, the women, they have to fight for that, because now the army control most of the cities under the regime control. So the woman is under pressure from the regime, and so the women, they are weak in the society now. But I think no, they have to fight for that.
You mean weak in a political sense?
Yes.
Because as family members, they are now stronger.
Yes. I mean, in the political issue, but in the society, they are the strongest.
Okay.
They are fighting. They are educating their kids. They do everything. But most of my friends in Syria, when I phone them or when I communicate with them, they always say, "We wish that we are brave like you, because you have this choice, and then you left. You decided to leave. We were very weak in the society also to say goodbye for the husband who is, for example, against her, or who is making his..."
Maybe say that you left your husband, is that?
Yeah, because we are not from the same political thinking too. So we were against each other also.
Okay. So can we go from this kind of gender question also to the question of gender in Lebanon? Because in Lebanon it was always much more liberal and more open-minded. So I saw even in the demonstrations in 2019, much more young girls on the demonstrations than everywhere else in the Arab country. Maybe in Tunisia it was also equal, but in the beginning, the demonstration, in the beginning, 2011, it was not really, let's say, a female revolution. Could we say that? But what's different in Lebanon then?
What's different is 10 years, and I feel a lot of...
These 10 years, you say. This is...
Yeah, there is a difference of 10 years, and I feel in those 10 years, a lot of sexual liberation and gender equality, kind of like this whole topic kind of exploded in Lebanon for sure, but also I feel if you look at Egypt and like Tunis and like in other places, and just like the amount of women that are in Saudi, like the amount of women that were just like setting up initiatives to claim their rights, be it like the movement to drive in Saudi, or the movement to fight harassment in Egypt, or the movement to like, against rape, like marital rape in Lebanon. Like this was not on anyone's radar 10 years ago. And just like how this conversation kind of became so obvious in the popular consciousness, I think this shifted a lot of things in the way women and minorities perform and perform in a public, like perform or use their bodies in a public space. So I feel this is also the seeds of the Arab Spring that no one talks about, like all this empowering of marginalized groups that happened in the past 10 years, the alternative educational spaces that were being created in the past 10 years, the environmental activism that was happening in the past 10 years. I mean, it's so easy to dismiss those initiatives because they don't come in and, you know, they're not like such...
You don't see them in the first place.
Yeah, but I think this is what kind of, you know, helps in dismantling these like oppressive structural foundations that we exist within. So I think I'm turning around your question, but I think it's an important point.
I wanted to have it in that way because, in my opinion, the 2011, it was not obvious that this was also, like, let's say, supporting the women's liberation. It didn't look like, you know. But then when I watched the people in the streets, you know, at least, I mean, I remember when this girl was in Egypt on the Tahrir, when she was taken, you know, she had this violet or blue dressing, and the military police took her off the clothes. I mean, this is something unheard in the Arab world, you know. I mean, this is even
ashamed.
Even more shame than in Europe. But it didn't happen, you know, an uprising of the women at that moment. But now I feel it's really, as you say, it's a different situation. Women have now a different level of opposition against the regimes and also the patriarchal thoughts.
And it also goes very much to this idea of controlling the information, you know, because there are platforms where women can just take to and, you know, create their own spaces to tell their own story. And the fact that these exist now is game-changing. And yeah.
Have you noticed that, I mean, beside Tunisia, where the women's liberation movement was always very strong, comparing to the other countries, that also in Sudan and Yemen, the women were, you know, up front.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And that was really amazing.
Yeah, you know, if we want to talk about the women to fight for their rights before the revolution or in the Arab Spring, actually the problem is not the woman is silent not to fight for her rights. The problem is some women, or most of the women, they don't know their rights. So because when you say for the woman, it's your right, for her, no, it's a shame, it's not my right. To know your rights and fight for rights is one issue, and to fight for something that you don't know, or someone is fighting for your rights and you accuse him or accuse her that she is doing something bad. As you know, it's sadly that we heard about Nawal Saadawi, that she has passed away. It's so sad. I'm really very sad as a human, as a woman. She was the women activist. She was fighting for women's rights, and most of the women, they were against her, you know. They were against her because women, they don't know exactly their rights. As soon as the women, they know their rights, they will be sad that they lose such a human who was fighting for them, Nawal Saadawi.
Yeah. I mean, we have maybe to explain the public here that she was really a radical feminist in the first place. She was defending the sexual rights of women in the first place. Nobody was talking about it. I mean, in the 60s, 70s, I mean, that was really incredible what she was saying. And she was not only fighting for the women's rights, she was also always telling that the question of the oppressed in general should also be discussed, not only the women's rights. The women's rights should be always put into the social questions. And she was very, very advanced, and I liked her very much because anytime she was in a Western TV show and they ask her, so you're taking the feminist ideas from the West, she was mocking them and said, you don't have any clue. I mean, these ideas are not Western ideas. We had them also, and we have them also. So, but the question is, of course, how to educate people on that. But yeah.
And it comes from the family, you know. It comes from the family because when the father or the parents, they educate their children, like to say to the daughter, "Oh, go and bring a glass of water," you know, simply a glass of water to your brother. So this is here. So there is no equality. But when you say to your son, "Go and drink your glass of water alone," or bring for your sister too. So it is from the family. It started from the family. Of course, it is a global. It is in the social also. But as soon as it's from the family, even if you are suffering outside, but at least you don't suffer at home. I was not suffering at home at all. But as soon as I get married, I was suffering for sure.
I see. Okay. So so the women's liberation has to be done individually, you think?
Together, but we start from, so if we don't want to have problems in the future, so we have to educate our sons also, like to really see that it's your right, it's equal for her right.
The sons and also the women, like I feel, you know, there was this huge conversation 2 weeks ago in Beirut, this woman, Sandrine Atalla, she's a doctor in like sexual health, and she has this show where basically she explains to people, to women, different issues related to like sexuality and sex, and like it was so surprising to see how like the shitstorm she received was also from women, like as if there's this, you know, resistance to change. And in this way I do feel that not just in this conversation, but like more generally, I feel that the topic of change is always connected to the individual. And I think I find myself repeating this a lot, but I really believe in the idea that once we are ready to change ourselves, that we can actually see that mirrored in the world outside of us. And that's my ground for hope.
But would you say the question of sexuality is a political question in the Arab world?
For sure.
Of course.
So why it was not really deposed in the first place, in the movement?
It started in Syria. It started because the regime, they said, sorry to interrupt you, Ibrahim, when the fathers, they asked for their sons or their kids, the regime said, send your wives, because the people, they were educated that the women, that they are only to be
part of,
to practice sex. I don't want to use the other word, but that's why it's a political issue.
It's always a political question.
Of course, nothing.
But I'm talking about of the liberation of people. Would you say?
The regime or the Arabic political politics, they are really very clever to let the people busy in things. That's why they cannot fight for freedom. So, you know, ages, more than ages, we are under the same regime in Syria, in Tunisia, in Egypt, because they let the people are busy in another issue. So they teach them, or they were educated to control the woman, like to if a woman fall in love or have sex without marriage, so they kill her. So the people, they focus, you know, they just focus on the woman or in this part, you know, of the body. That's why they cannot fight for another things or change for another thing.
So my question was also, why has it was, you know, the basic of the movement in 2011, it was the youth. And especially when you look after the movement in Egypt, it was also funded by a lot of middle-class youngsters. So in that case, I was wondering why this question of liberty or libertinage was not discussed or on the topic. Because
at the time, I think it was a bit too early. Like,
it was too early.
Also going back to this conversation of controlling the narrative, we were just discovering the tools, you know, to have a voice. And then I think now, like, it's just phenomenal what happened in the past 10 years in terms of women and other marginalized groups taking to those spaces and reclaiming their story. And I feel just now, since we're at the turn of the decade, I can't even imagine what's going to happen in the next 10 years in terms of, these movements just like exploding because now they have the means. Mm-hmm. And they have the means and the audience. I feel a lot of these movements are actually gaining ground because a lot of the women and a lot of the marginalized people and a lot of the citizens who are just like fed up with this like fucked up system, they're just clinging onto them because they feel that they could lead to some, to some way out.
Do you believe the same?
I agree.
You agree?
No.
Okay, so it has to come. It's not yet there.
I mean, it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening.
And I mean, really, it's a bit unrealistic to imagine that we're going to dismantle an entire, patriarchal system in 10 years. And I use the 10 years because I feel that that was the window after which, or during which we actually controlled the means of the production. And by the production here, I mean like producing our information, producing our own story and like putting it out. Mm-hmm. And I feel that's how the culture shifts. When more people become aware of other ways, other stories, they, the possibility of, they get infected by this possibility that there exists another way. And maybe what we have been taught in schools or by the government is not necessarily the only way. There are other ways of existence and being. And it's only just starting.
Okay. Maybe we can come back. I think we are, I don't know how much time we still have. Maybe you can show me. I can't see it. Okay, we have a little bit more time. Can we come back to a question which is really politics or strategic, and you decided individually that you will escape this question in a way. Mm-hmm. You are in the middle. You are in the middle of this question in Lebanon. You were very much involved in a let's say in movement which was really putting the government into a corner. I mean, they had to leave. There was nothing else. Nothing worked anymore because the demonstrations were so strong. But now the system has not changed. Is it? I mean, the question is always why this movement, and especially we have seen that also in Egypt. There was such a huge movement, and then they forced the government to make free elections, and this free elections was not won by this young movement. It was won by the Islamic Conservative Reactionary Party. So, how to get out of this dilemma?
I don't know. Like, I don't think it was realistic to take to the streets expecting that we're going to change the system overnight. And I think a lot of the disappointment came from, just like this euphoria of being on the street and realizing that we can change something. A lot of us expected that we will actually do that so easily, and it turned out not to be the case. And I think,
I mean, we have maybe to tell people. I mean, in Lebanon, the streets was so full that literally the government was in the prison in their parliament because they couldn't get out. Mm-hmm, no, mm-hmm. So in that sense, you say, okay, it. Yes, they tell me that we are over time, but okay. So we have to make it short now. Yeah. But to come back, we are in a difficult situation. We have also in Iraq now a huge youth movement and so on and so on. And there is no political party which could transform this power on the street into a changement of the real governmental power. So how to get out of this dilemma?
Listen, a lot of it is global, like grand global political alignments, very much connected to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And this we don't have control over. We do have control over the narrative, which can eventually affect the situation over time. But on a day-to-day basis, we literally are paralyzed in this way. What we have control over is how we respond individually to these dilemmas. And I feel that what happened in Beirut after the explosion in August, by all these different individuals taking it upon themselves to do the role of the government, it's almost as if like an alternative, a parallel state just emerged by people doing what the government should have done.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a bit like, I don't believe that we're going to change the system by actually fighting against it. We're going to change the system by building a new system and just eventually making the old one kind of go obsolete. And I feel this is what a lot of these efforts are kind of, channeled towards.
So you think if Putin gets weaker and weaker and Erdogan weaker and weaker, there will be the civil society able in Syria to change the system?
Yeah, I think so, of course, because if it was from the beginning just the people, the Syrian people and, the regime, they were the people, they asking for freedom, and the regime, fighting the people. If there is no Russia, no Turkey, no Iran, no America, no Daesh, so I think it will change, but not, of course, in the first 5 years, but because it comes from outside, the support for the regime, and it was not easy, and still it's not easy, and they don't know really when it will finish, because now my fears, as I say, it is more stronger than my hope. But of course, we will always wish that we still have this, small strength from hope that something will change in Syria. But if there is no support from outside for the regime, for sure, at least we have election, we have something changed. Maybe not the whole system, but at least some. Yeah.
And I mean, you said something earlier, this Arabic expression, ila al-abad. I don't think anything. I think the only truth in nature is that everything is always changing, and nothing exists forever. And look at apartheid in South Africa, and all other, oppressive.
Soviet Union. The Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Okay. So last question. What could Switzerland or the Swiss people do for the next Arab Spring?
Very difficult. Do you have an answer, Ibrahim?
What would you wish?
To go and demo with us, as I do with the French strike. So the Swiss women
Solidarity,
Yeah.
Solidarity, but also I think solidarity is a big word. I think it needs to be channeled in a way that is productive. And I feel in this space, what's productive about solidarity is the ability to help us propagate and perpetuate the narrative, our narrative, which is very much against the state. We're very much against oppression, very much against injustice. And this is very much squarely connected to what's happening in Palestine, but also in the rest of the Arab world. And I feel kind of perpetuating this narrative and keeping it alive is integral to this movement of change.
Good. So could I wrap it up and say such, gestures, such initiatives like the Neumarkt Theater did, it should be done more.
Of course.
From the Swiss side.
Of course.
And we should have more that kind of discussions. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
Good. So we're at the end of our discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will change back in German. Ich hoffe, Ihnen hat es gefallen und Sie haben Lust, nächsten Montag auch dabei zu sein bei Kosmopolitics zwischendurch und sich wieder in den Stream einzuklinken. Nächsten Montag heißt das Thema Stolpersteine und Raubkunst. Und es geht eigentlich um die Nachwirkungen auch der Geschichte, der Nazizeit nämlich, und die Frage, was bedeutet Erinnerungskultur. Mit dabei ist Heinz Nick, der mit dem Verein Transparenz die Petition Licht in die Sammlung Bürle lancierte, um das ungelöste Problem von Raub- und Fluchtkunst im Zürcher Kunsthaus zu erinnern. Mit ihm dabei ist auch der Historiker und ehemalige Professor an der Uni Zürich, Jakob Tanner, der ja viel zu diesem Thema gearbeitet hat, und Dina Wieler, Geschäftsführerin der Stiftung gegen Rassismus und Antisemitismus. Aber jetzt machen Sie noch nicht gleich aus, weil wir zeigen jetzt nochmal den ganzen Film, von dem Sie vielleicht einen Clip gesehen haben vorhin, der beiden Künstlerinnen Nur Sukun und Miriam Boulos, welche im Rahmen der Nouvelle Nahda am Theater am Neumarkt entstanden ist. Bis dann. Danke.
Réveille aisément. Je prends mon Nescafé. J'écoute les nouvelles.
Basically, right after the speech ended, people went back to the streets with fury and anger this time.
Étrangère.
دولة اليوم في حالة ترهل وضعف
Local.
والخوف يتمدد من الوضع المالي.
Je regarde mon mobile pour voir la mise à jour, c'est-à-dire l'agenda, leur agenda.
وبكل شفافية
اخبار تلفزيون كارثه.
الدولة ثقة اللبنانيين بها.
شعارات كلها كذابين، كذب 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 كذب. هلا بيعملوا اجتماعيه الدولار، انا ما بتلاقي دولار بالبلد، وين؟
هلا الليره بتعطي ما لها قيمه، يعني الليره فرنك ما بتسوى كمان. حاربونا بلقمتنا كمان، هلا صار حرب جوع هيدا.
انا ما بدي مصريات من الدوله، انا مني موظف. منا عم باخذ شيء من الدوله، نحن بنعطي الدوله، نحن بنعطي، ساعدنا تناخذ حقنا. انزل انا بالبيجامه وانام على السلم، شخص لوحدي بكل البنايه فزعوا مني، قالوا شو عم بتساوي هون؟ طلعنا من البيت، ما في اخفى، ما فيك تخفي، ما في سقف فوق، ولو ما عم نتعرض للنص، يعني عم نحكي استراتيجيا او شو بيقولوا، يعني ما عم تيجي ولا قبله، يعني بس انه ما فيك تنام مجرد ما في بوم بوم بوم، لو كان الخصم بقمص ما فيك تسمع تنام على البوم بوم، كيف اذا كمان اخر طريق ما يخلوني انام على السلم، يعني مش نام، اقعد اقعد. خيي بس بلشت الاحداث راح ينام عند رفيقه صاحبه. نحن نعيش مع الذكر. هيدي ذكرى صورة أهلي، ذكرى بالجريدة، جريدة النهار لما قريناها عثر على جده خلي، ونحن صرنا نفتش ونلاقيها.
على البيت بقعد بصبر لحالي، بقعد لحالي أنا.
أنا إجمالاً بحب الزعل، بحب الزعل.
في إنارة من عشية.
الليل تبع انتهى من وقت بلشت الأحداث. من وقت الأحداث أنا ابن الأحداث، ما بقى نعي في الليل، هيدا بيناتنا. اللي بدك تفهم السياسي اقرا شو مكتوب على الحيطان. تبني وطن بدك تكون نظيفة، سامعتيني؟ تكون نظيفة، بدك تكون نظيفة، ما فيك تكوني غير شكل وما تكون نظيفة.
شو بدنا ناخذ معنا؟ ولا شيء، ولا شيء، ولا شيء والله. يعني الغرض أحسن من صاحبه بضل.
تبني وطن بدك تكون نظيفة، سامعتيني؟ تكون نظيفة، بدك تكون نظيفة، ما فيك تكوني غير شكل وما تكون نظيفة. فكت تتوصل معك لهالأمور هاي. Pour la première fois, 3000 femmes de 17 à 77 ans s'expriment avec franchise et on sort de leur vie, SEXY, plus de zèle. الدنيا كلها مبنية غلط.
C'est la moindre des choses. Nous sommes dans la lutte aussi pour la réforme.
كنت رايح بطريقة ضعيفة، بوصل على الديد اند، بوصل على الديد اند، تروح بطريق بس بتوصل على الديد، توقف.
نحن فضوت البين، فضوت البين.
أنا من أولادي يعيشوا dans un futur meilleur. هذا حلمي، وبحلم إنه que je ne tombe pas malade. C'est-à-dire partir sans maladie.
هو أهم شيء المحبة، ونحن ما بنحب بعض الصراحة.
كلمة ليكي كلمة غرام ثقيلة. مش ثقيلة بينفهم غلط. On ne peut pas vivre sans amour. On ne peut pas vivre sans amour. Ce qui est plus important que l'amour, أكثر من الأمور il y a l'affection.
كيف بتشوفي المستقبل؟ كيف بتحسي عن المستقبل؟
Écoute, par rapport au Liban, qui est un pays vraiment miracle, c'est-à-dire chaque fois qu'il tombe, il se ressaisit, et par miracle, on a toujours, je ne sais pas, des facteurs d'ici et de là qui interviennent au moment opportun, c'est-à-dire quand il faut vraiment. Même si on tombe dans le précipice, il y a tout le temps une gorgée d'espoir chez les Libanais.